Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Indigitous podcast. I'm excited for today's episode. I'm always excited. The reason I'm excited this time is because I'm talking to my friend Liam Savage. He is the Director of Innovation at One Hope, and he just wrote a brand new book called Green Sky Innovation that you might be able to see right now, unless you're listening to the audio only podcast. So we're going to talk about both of those things. We're going to talk about his book and how you can innovate in ministry and all that exciting stuff. Liam, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeremy. It's always a pleasure to be with you. I love Indigitous, so it's an honor to be here. I am, like you said, the Director of Innovation at One Hope, which is an international ministry that serves children and youth around the world and helps equip churches to engage them with God's Word. As the Director of Innovation, I often try to describe my role, and it's sometimes difficult to do so. I'll talk for 20 minutes and people will be like, wait, what do you do? In a phrase, it's really just trying to help the organization do new things well. And so I apply a lot of the concepts from business and technology and a lot of different fields that are best practices for how to do new things well. And I help apply those ideas to ministry to hopefully help us do evangelism and discipleship in new ways.
And you have an interesting story about how you even got involved in ministry in the first place. Can you tell us about that?
It's funny the way God works in surprising and unexpected ways. When I was in high school, I had a friend who was my best friend in middle school, and he ended up going to a different high school. And so I had to make new friends, and that was really hard. And I sort of realized that my friends were only my friends because we happened to be within the same geographical area. And it was, I don't know, it was sort of shocking to realize, but it made me also realize that anyone in the world theoretically could have been my friend. And as I was in high school, I had many friends who were non-Christians, and I cared about them very deeply. And I was pretty terrible at sharing the gospel with them. I didn't know exactly how to talk about my faith. And so but I really cared about them. And so I had this missional calling to my friends that made me want to pursue theology and an understanding of God's words so that I could help them understand the truth and the hope and the love that's available through Christ. But that care for my friends, plus that realization that theoretically anyone could have been my friend, made me have this really strong missional burden and desire to do evangelism and discipleship and help people know Jesus. And so my plan in college was that I was just going to buy a one-way ticket somewhere in the world, exotic, and that was my only conception of what missions work was to just go talk to people. And that was obviously a bad idea. My girlfriend at the time, now wife, helped tell me you'll probably die really quickly with your existing plan. And so my plan was to just buy a one-way ticket to Mexico and walk all the way through Latin America and all the way down to the tip of Tierra del Fuego and back up. She's like, you won't make it through the first country. Yeah, I in high school, I had also an incredible opportunity to learn some web development, coding, and graphic design skills with some teachers there. And God really just brought those two things together in an interesting way. When I got hired at One Hope, it was in the area of innovation. And it was because I had these digital skills with this biblical theology training from my university degrees at Biola University. And so God used those things. He's like, digital plus your missional calling plus theology, there you go, innovation. And I'd never heard of innovation before as a thing that businesses even did. And so I really spent the past 10 years trying to learn how to do what my job title had in it, which was innovation. So it's been a lot of learning.
A lot of people would probably be surprised that a ministry really has someone who's in charge of innovation or even thinks about innovation. Why is innovation even important? I know you have a whole book that goes into that, but if you're doing something that you feel hey, it's working, we have a ministry, people are getting to know Jesus, which is what we want to have happen. Why do we need to innovate?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's interesting too, because even the idea of a ministry or an organization that does some form of work, like organizations are designed for efficiency and to get better at doing things well, and they're designed to do a specific thing.
Mm.
And so innovation means like you have to stop doing one thing and start doing something else, something new. I think it's really important because if you just look at the business sector and you look at the Fortune 500 list of companies that are like the most financially successful businesses in the world, the companies that are on that list, the first list that ever came out about 70-ish years ago, today only 10% of those businesses are still on the list,
Mm.
still exist. Like they've died, they've been purchased, they went bankrupt. Like they're no longer on the list, and it's really surprising to realize like 70 years isn't that long. That's one lifetime, and yet the companies that had everything going for them, the most successful, profitable businesses, became obsolete in one lifetime. And I think sometimes as the church, we can forget that we're subject to those same forces of change that affect business. They affect ministry as well. And so if you're not constantly changing and looking for new ways to do things and new ways to serve people and respond to culture and new technologies and all of the things that affect culture and people around us, then you're going to become obsolete. Like that's just the fact. And so innovation is really important if you want your ministry to have that long-term impact.
Mm. Yeah, and I think a lot of ministries that maybe didn't value innovation, I think the lockdowns of the pandemic
Mm.
probably changed that. And at the very least, they're more open to it and maybe
Yeah.
are thinking about, okay, so we had to pivot once and do things
Yeah.
differently. Are there other times where that's just going to be necessary? So maybe your
Yeah.
book and this conversation is happening at the right time where
Yeah.
uh, ministries are starting to
Yeah.
think about this more.
That's true. Yeah, I started writing this book about 2 years ago, and so I really am. I wanted it to be done immediately, but of course things take a while, and so I hope that it's still helpful and relevant. As maybe churches are saying, yeah, we had to change, and it was really unpleasant, and we'd like to get better at that. I hope that Green
Hmm.
Sky Innovation will help them to learn and do it well, make it a part of their regular practice.
Yeah. And one of the things you do at One Hope with innovation is called an innovation launch pad. Can you tell us what that is?
The Innovation Launchpad started before the book came out, and a lot of the content that's in the book came from the Innovation Launchpad. It's essentially a 16-week course that helps to train people who are in ministry how to do innovation. And it gives a really holistic picture of all of the skills in innovation. The first half is really focused on taking a project from like 0 to 1. Like, how do you get an idea
Hmm.
a reality? How do you make it real, make it tangible? And so it walks through, defining the problem, understanding your audience, building out your ideas and prototypes. How do you launch something? How do you scale it and grow it? And then the second half is more focused on more the organizational skills and leadership practices. So, for instance, how do you build a culture of innovation? Uh, how do you do storytelling and marketing well behind your brand? How do you build effective partnerships and collaborate well internationally? So those are the two halves of the course, and it's been phenomenal to teach. We have really international cohorts, so we have roughly, I would say, 300 graduates so far in the past 3 years. The
Wow.
small cohorts basically wrestle with the text from a lot of the primary like thought leaders in these more secular spaces, and then we, in discussion with this international cohort from diverse ministries and countries, wrestle with how do those ideas apply to ministry. Do we see them reflected in theology and in the Bible and in Jesus's ministry? How was Jesus an innovator? How did Jesus build culture? How did Jesus use story? And so we look at all of these different aspects and wrestle with how we apply them. And so it's been so great. I love teaching it. I still teach around 2 or 3 cohorts a year now. But the book was really a response to people who said, I just don't have the time to take a
Hmm.
16-week long class. And it is a master's level class. You know, there's real work to be done. It is also accredited. So if you do it and you want to put it towards a master's degree, you're welcome to. But yeah, it's the book helps to condense those ideas and really give them to you in a more digestible format, so you can just like read it on an airplane rather than taking it over weeks.
And one of the things I like about the book, you said the course is a master's level course, but when I read the book, I felt like it didn't have excessive jargon. It wasn't like
Mm,
too deep for me to be able to understand. Because a lot of books that go into like similar topics, it's just really dense reading. They use a lot of terms you don't know, and it's just
mm.
really difficult read. Where I felt like your book really took the what was important, explained it well, and distilled it in a way that really I think anyone can read and get some stuff out of it. So that's one of the things I really appreciate about your book.
Well, that's so encouraging. That was definitely one of my goals. I would say that the primary audience for the book was uh, the goal was to serve international ministries.
Hmm.
There's a lot of stuff that's available for, you know, first world sort of very wealthy English speaking, and I wanted this to be accessible to anyone. So yeah, I tried to simplify the ideas as much as I possibly could.
Green Sky Innovation is the book. What
Yeah,
exactly is it about? And if someone wants to read it, what do you hope that they'll get out of it?
yeah, great question. So I would say so. Green Sky Innovation. Why is it called that? I'll maybe start there. It's kind of a weird title. I wanted it to be a visual metaphor, like an image in your mind that was a story. So blue sky innovation is maybe jargonish. It's a catchphrase that a lot of people use or maybe have heard. Blue sky innovation, and it really means you want to create new ideas without constraints and pursue
Mm.
creativity for creativity's sake. And we don't necessarily need to know what the value of these things is going to be before we start. Like we just need to play and explore, and that's blue sky innovation. Like us standing on the ground, looking up at the sky, saying the sky's the limit. Green sky innovation is saying, well, what if our foundation wasn't on earth? What if our feet weren't grounded on the planet but in heaven, in God's kingdom? And if our feet were planted in the sky in God's kingdom in heaven, then the horizon would be flipped, and instead of looking up at the blue sky, we'd be looking at the green earth, and so the sky would look green. And so it's really just that idea of like, what does innovation look like from God's perspective? And the main image on the cover is a pair of glasses, and you can see the horizon upside down in them,
Mm.
and they're upside down themselves. And it's just to show like the book is focused on 7 different perspectives or glasses that you can put on that shape the way that you look at a problem. And so the 7 perspectives, just briefly, it starts with the kingdom builder's perspective, and then it moves to the philosopher's perspective, the beginner's perspective, storytellers, culture makers, hosts, and learners. And just a quick intro of each one. The kingdom builder is focused on partnership and collaboration, that we're a part of God's kingdom. And
Mm.
when we operate in unity and diversity, good things happen. The philosopher's perspective talks about systems and root causes, and how sometimes in ministry we can solve symptoms to problems, but not actually address the core problem that's causing it. And so, how do we help identify those things and address them? The beginner's perspective really focuses on how we have assumptions that we bring to everything that we're doing, and that those assumptions can sometimes blind us or inhibit us from finding a good solution. So how do we look at things through new eyes, through the people that we're serving? It's about a lot of to do with empathy and ways of gathering and responding effectively to the real needs rather than our assumptions. Storytellers perspective is a lot about marketing. Like how do we communicate effectively? How do we bring people into what we're doing as a ministry and bring people on a journey that they want to be a part of? The Let's see, we've got the culture makers perspective, and this is about how do you build a culture in your organization that brings the best out of people, that helps them contribute, helps them feel effective and connected to ministry. The host perspective is really about how do you activate people around a table. Like a lot of innovation work involves facilitation, like bringing unity and good decision making and collaboration between diverse people at a table. And so the skills behind how you do that are really powerful. And then the last one is the learner's perspective. And this is really about how do you test your ideas before you get too far down the road. So it's a lot to do with prototyping and iteration. How do you learn quickly and small and lean so that you don't overinvest in the wrong direction and end up having to redo a bunch of work. Those each perspective, it's very holistic. Like there's a lot of different skills and things covered. And if you're coming to a problem or an opportunity in your ministry, each perspective will sort of give you a different set of solutions or different set of tools for how to come up with ways to move forward.
Yeah, and I like that at the end of each chapter for each of the perspectives, it always has like a reflection question or like some way to apply it to what you're thinking. So it's not just here's a bunch of theory, good luck. There's actually some ways to help you apply that as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. It's amazing how many different pieces there are to writing a book, and I think I underestimated the project, which is probably why it took 2 years. But each of those pieces was, sort of a separate thought project. Like, what are the right questions to ask that would give people the handles to apply this today? So anyways, I hope it's helpful.
Yeah, I found it very helpful. One of the things that stuck out to me was in the philosopher's perspective, how it talked about questions. And when we're children, like we question everything, just we're nonstop questions. And to the point where to the adults in our life, it usually gets annoying. Like, why do they keep asking so many questions? But then as we age, we just get less and less inquisitive and we just sort of accept things as they are. And that's something you talked a little bit about. So I guess why is it important for us to get back to asking more questions, and how can we do that in our ministries?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's interesting because so much of our life is directed towards gaining expertise. Like you think about school and even job experience and your profession, and it's all focused on learning and mastering a certain set of skills and things. But it's hard because the more expertise you have, the less likely you are to ask questions because you think you know the answer.
Right.
But the world, like we said it earlier, keeps changing really fast, and it changes a lot of the premises behind what we know and what we've gained expertise in. So I think the most key thing to regaining that childlike wonder is a healthy dose of humility, to recognize that we don't know everything and that we need to continue to be open to change. And even in the areas where we're most expert are probably the areas where we need to be most careful to continue learning. I think the idea of childlike wonder, you can get there by relying on God, like seeking God in things that He's the creator and maker of everything, and He is just so full of mystery. There are things about Him and this world that we will never understand. And I don't know, one practical thing for getting that humility is to sort of compare a track record of the decisions or predictions or things that you thought were great ideas compared to their actual results, and see like what's your batting average, like what's your record of success on accurately thinking that was a good idea. And I find that it's really humbling, the things that I thought were going to be absolute, amazing successes that were not. And so like just recognizing that and having the humility to say like, let's learn, let's listen, let's seek new ways of thinking about things.
Yeah, since you brought up being humbled by failure, we might as well talk about that. In your book, you talked about two different products that you worked on. One of them that, when you describe in the book, I thought, wow, that sounds great. And I'm actually familiar with the product. I was like, yeah, I remember being excited about that. But for whatever reason, it just
Yeah.
didn't see the success that you were looking for. But then a different product that you worked on has been hugely successful.
Yeah.
So can you kind of take us through that, and what are these products, and why do you think one worked and one didn't?
Yeah, that's such a good question. There's so much that goes into it. Uh, I think so. One product is an app that went with a book that we made, and the app was a like an interactive story. You could play with it. It's very similar to the app that was a success called the Bible app for kids, which we're celebrating 100 million downloads just this week. So that's
That's
huge.
amazing.
Over 60 languages in every country of the world. So massive success, like by every account. But the other one, which was so similar and made by the same organization, wasn't a success. And honestly, I would say one of the keys to success was our our philosophy of product versus a service.
Hmm.
And if you think about a product is something that you build and finish, like it's done. You can put it on a shelf and sell it, and it's sort of like all of the effort that went into creating it has finished, and it's entered like the get it out into people's hands phase. A service, like you're never really done with it. A service is more like a restaurant. If a restaurant made, one pot of lasagna and then stopped and everyone went home, like people would walk in, the restaurant would be dark, no one would help them find their seat, take their order, like it just you would be utterly confused as to like what's going on here. I'm here to be served food and this isn't happening. And so with the Bible app for kids, we definitely treated it like a service. Like we launched with a small set of stories, but our intention was always to grow it. We launched it in one language, but our intention was always to translate it. It didn't have a lot of game elements, but our intention was always to add them. And we staffed and we had capacity and partnership in place to support all of the things that it would need to develop even parent resources, Sunday school resources. Like our intention was to serve families as they engaged with scripture and youth for a long time. And so that mentality of like, I want to serve people, I want to go on a journey with them rather than just make something that's this enclosed, one and done thing, is what I would say was one of the major reasons why it succeeded. And I think probably the reason the one didn't have that was just a limited capacity. But the organization and our partners, we worked with the YouVersion team at Life Church, and it's just been an absolutely fantastic collaboration, which is another, I think, key to success. The one that failed was worked on by me alone, and just working with contractors and no like partnership collaborators to like make it better and fill in each other's blind spots. So yeah, I would say a service mentality and collaboration were two keys to the success.
Yeah, and the Bible app for kids, obviously very successful, used all over the world, used in so many languages, and used to really help children get involved with reading the Bible and get excited about the Bible. So it's really exciting that you guys have seen that amount of success with it. One of the things you talk about in the book that really stood out for me, just because it was kind of an aha moment. I'd never thought of
Mm,
it that way. You talk about the principles of gamification, which I had
mm,
heard about before when talking about something like building a website, and you want to make your website something that people would want to engage with. But then
mm.
you actually took that and applied it to sharing the gospel, to introducing someone to the good news. I thought that was really interesting. Can you sort of break that down for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's funny. Gamification is a really interesting topic because some people really dislike it and others love it. And I really think gamification, most simply put, it's not about making everything into a game. It's the study of why we're motivated to play games. Like what about games is intrinsically motivating that we're willing to voluntarily spend our time. If it's a video game, like grinding up your character's level for hours. If it's a board game, like making really hard strategic decisions and competing against people. Like games are work. Like there's a lot that goes into it. But yet we enjoy it. And so if we can unlock that sense of enjoyment that comes from games and apply it to other areas of life, it's really powerful. So when you think about gamification in ministry or in sharing the gospel, I think it's just really powerful to say we should be motivated to share the gospel. and it should be delightful to be a part of God's plan. And so there's a section in here in the book where we talk about gamification, and I feel like I wrote it well, so maybe I should just read it. It's a paragraph about gamification. So it says,
Yeah.
um, so the 8 elements of gamification are basically epic meaning, accomplishment, empowerment, ownership, social influence, scarcity, unpredictability, and avoidance. And I don't have time to dig into each one of those, but those aspects are key drivers of human motivation. And so I would say what I wrote here is the church is uniquely positioned to offer eternal value in response to the 8 core drivers. We have the ultimate meaning to offer humanity in the epic story of Christ's redemption of sinful humanity. The Bible says that the accomplishment of leading someone to Christ causes the angels in heaven to rejoice. God empowers us to take his gospel to the ends of the earth. The call is clear, but he did not tell us exactly how to do this and leaves room for infinite creativity. We are called to ownership, not of rare things in this life, but to take action that will store up for us treasure in heaven. Churches are full of opportunities for leveraging social influence in how we build relationships with one another and welcome others. The scarcity of hope in the world makes the gospel truly good news. Everyone can enter God's kingdom if they have faith. What an incredible message. This plan to send his son to earth to die for our sins was incredibly unpredictable. So as we like all of those 8 elements are there as we think about the gospel in our lives. And so anyways, I just love that framework. And I think it's been so helpful for me to think through how do we engage people well in the gospel? How can we invite them into something that they love and want to be a part of?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And when you talk about inviting people into something, one of the things we talk about a lot is journeying with people. That
Mm.
sharing the gospel shouldn't be just like, hey, I find a stranger, I tell them about Jesus, then I leave and they never see me again. Like, it's most
Yeah.
effective when we're actually journeying with someone in their life. And you wrote about that in your book. You talked about people tend to remember what breaks the pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll read one of the quotes I wrote down. You wrote, as we journey with people through their lives, we will get to celebrate their peaks and comfort them in their valleys. Most importantly, we can be alert to possibilities for them to encounter Jesus personally. So with that being so important, in our daily lives, we all have friends, family members, coworkers, people we know that don't have a relationship with Jesus. How can we be alert for those possibilities?
Yeah, it's so good. I I think it's interesting. Jesus journeyed with people. Like you
Mhm.
think about his ministry, and he went so deep with those 12 disciples for 3 years. And I think a lot of times ministries can get caught up in sort of short term or nearsightedness in terms of like we have to do this much activity by this time, and it's very focused on numbers rather than journeys. But relationships take time to develop, and trust takes time to develop, and understanding, and even just before Christ's crucifixion, the disciples didn't really understand what Jesus was talking about. And so I think we sometimes overestimate our ability to like share the gospel and get someone to a decision, and we underestimate the absolute critical nature of being a part of their life and being a friend and caring for them. Um, it's beautiful if we can get it right. And so I guess I would just say, how can we put that into practice? Um, I would say just have a focus on relationship.
Mhm.
Love like Jesus loved. Be mindful of their life and their values and what they care about, and care about them first. And through that care, like they will naturally feel more loved and feel more open to saying like, why do you care about me so much? You don't even know me. And you're like, no, I do know you. Like we were strangers, but now we're friends, and like I love you. And and you'll find opportunities in that relationship where you can extend Christ-like love or grace and forgiveness and be a comfort to them in a way that most people are not. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think it's kind of like, I don't know. I've heard discipleship is the new evangelism. And I don't know. I like that idea that like the best way to do evangelism is by living life with someone and caring for them more deeply.
So we've talked a lot about innovation. You have a book out. You have the Innovation Launchpad. You have lots of stuff you're working on. So for anyone who made it this far into this
Yeah.
interview, they're probably interested in innovation and ministry in one way or another. What's one step they should take?
Yeah. Well, so here's what I'll say. So go to the website, greenskyinnovation.com. Greenskyinnovation.com is the website. So just the title of the book. There's a quiz that I made on there to help you identify one chapter that you should read. And it helps you assess sort of your personal gifting, your personal strength, your disposition towards one of those 7 perspectives that we talked about. And then also it helps you identify your greatest ministry opportunity. Like what would help your ministry take the greatest step forward? And then it tells you the greatest alignment between your personal strength and your ministry opportunity. And it says, if you only read one chapter from Green Sky Innovation, read this one. So I'd recommend taking that quiz. And then also the entire book is available for free. So when you read that one chapter, you'll be able to read and access the entire content or the audiobook on the website for free. I never wanted price to be a barrier to you doing better ministry. So the whole project in my mind is a tithe. I want to serve you and your ministry. And if you want to talk about it further, feel free to email me, reach out. I'm pretty easy to find online, LinkedIn, wherever you'll be able to, the website, there's places you can contact. So anyways, love to help and support your ministry in any way. But yeah, find that first chapter and I hope it will serve you well.
Thank you so much. I'm sure it'll be a great blessing to everyone who takes you up on that and does the quiz and reads at least one chapter of the book. I have a feeling anyone who reads one chapter is going to go back to the beginning and just read the whole thing because it's just a great book all around. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Everybody go to greenskyinnovation.com, take the quiz, read at least one chapter, and we'll start from there. Liam, thank you for joining us.
Of course.
We're glad to have you.
It's been a delight. Thanks, Jeremy. Have a beautiful day.
Thanks.